Rebekah Enoch, and I am the museum administrator at the Wren's Nest, which is a house museum. It's actually Atlanta's oldest house museum in the West End of Atlanta, and it's the home of Joel Chandler Harris, who was an author and journalist, and he was best known for capturing the stories of Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Bear from enslaved people that he made friends with when he had a job as a printer devil on a plantation outside of Atlanta in Eatonton, Georgia. So this house is where he lived when he was a writer, and I run the things here and try to invite people in and raise awareness about this house. It's got great snapshot of the Victorian era home, and it's also sprinkled around. There's a lot of interesting things related to Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and all the whimsical stories that Joel Chandler Harris was able to capture during his time talking with the enslaved people that he made friends with. Well, I started at the Wren's Nest about 1.5 years ago, and one of the first things I noticed was the Squirrel Census poster that was hanging on the wall of our gift shop. And it really struck me because it was such a great and interesting blend of like something slightly ridiculous but fun, has practical uses but kind of nominally so, but also incorporated the drawings from the A.B. Frost from the Joel Chandler Harris books in the display on the poster. And so it was this great blend of the caricature of animals in kind of interacting dressed as people, that whimsical element, the kind of anthropomorphizing of animals as being involved in our lives in a way that, you know, we like to imagine they might be, and having relationships that they might. And this poster really kind of blended that weird space between science and art, which I thought was really fun, and I could easily imagine if my kids were younger wanting to purchase one and hang it on their walls. And then when I started looking at it, I realized that we were getting low on our stock of those posters, and I wanted to make sure that anyone who wanted a Squirrel Census poster would be able to purchase one. So, but no one still at the Wren's Nest had any contact information about who to talk to or how to go about it. So thankful, you know, the internet sometimes comes in a good way. I was able to find the Squirrel Census people on Instagram and write to them, and they wrote back. So I was just over the moon that I was able to make contact with them, and I started inquiring about how we could go about doing it. And it became a longer process because they no longer had any in print that they could send to me. And because of the original agreement, the Squirrel Census people are the people who did it for us, obviously, in the first instance. So they had to reach out to local printers because it has very specific specs on how it should be printed, the type of paper, the quality, which I understand because it is a work of art. And as an artist, that designer wanted to protect the presentation of the art that they did. So then they gave me some different ideas of where I could go to maybe get them printed, and started costing it out. And you know, because we're a small nonprofit, our budget is a little small, so I had to wait until we had the capital to invest, because I knew that we would sell these posters, but we also had to wait for our New Year budget. But I was just so excited as well to connect with Danger Press, and I'm kind of new to this area. I'm not new to the city, but it was last here years and years ago. So I was like, oh great, another local printer. So it's great to connect with the team over there and kind of work together to try to share some of the interesting things that are happening with the world. And so it's just been really fun. The people I've met at the Squirrel Census and Danger Press, and just through trying to find out how we can get more posters in our gift shop. When I saw the Squirrel Census poster, I love the caricatures of the animals that are on it, and then I looked closer and I realized that it actually was capturing some data. You know, they did a census of the squirrels on the Wren's Nest property. I mean, in essence, that's a little bit ridiculous, but it's also such a fun way to use science. And you can easily imagine kids being involved in something like that. And then I looked them up, I learned more. They did one in Central Park, and I just thought, this is the kind of thing I love to see in this world, where people are putting their minds to like doing projects that have some practical applications, but they also have just engagement applications. How much fun the whole process would be, and then getting an artist to render it and display it. And so the Squirrel Census poster, I was like, this is something unique to the Wren's Nest. You can't get this anywhere else. It's a census of squirrels on our property, and it incorporates the house because it has a map of the grounds, and then it has the information and the data that was gathered about the squirrels when they were here. And there's talk of maybe someday doing another one. Let's see, we can compare data. And then the use of the drawings by A.B. Frost from the Joel Chandler Harris stories, it just spoke to me of such a great blending of whimsy, fun, and childhood, but in a way that's not childish. And I know when I was trying to raise my kids, I would really try to keep away from things that as an adult make my brain turn to jelly because they're so inane, and try to find things that don't speak down to kids and don't speak down to young people, but instead include them in part of that process, not the joke, but in the fun narrative. And I felt like this poster really had that. And so I really wanted to make sure that we didn't lose that asset in our gift shop. And I was willing to spend time trying to search down who we could talk to and how we could get them. And it has been quite a year, but more than 6 months later, we finally have the result of that. And I feel like that process has also really enhanced my network, my friends, my experiences. And so I wanted to make sure that I was still in our gift shop so that people who visit the Wren's Nest can purchase something that's really unique and special and speaks to what I think the Brer Fox and Brer Bear stories capture, but also is unique to this house. So it blends both of those things really well. And it was important to me in my role at this museum to keep that alive, to keep that part component in there. I don't want to have offerings in the gift shop that are just generic, that are just like basic, that you can find anywhere. The things that makes our museum unique, the thing that make the experience unique, those are the things I want people to remember. And we're a small museum, but that has its advantages. We can have this kind of influence, we can have these kind of quirky things, we can do what we want. So I just want to make sure that people who visit are able to kind of experience that and also take a little bit of it home with them if they want to. The first poster I think of, I don't have it anymore because it fell apart because that's how long I kept it. I was born in Atlanta and my parents took me on a massive road trip one summer when I was 16 and we were in Berkeley and we were at a small independent printing shop that sold posters, and they had a poster that had a poodle that was drawn. He was got a spiky collar on, and I was doing the punk thing, and so it was called Poodle with a Mohawk, and it said, "You'll never call him Fifi again. He's small, he's black, he's mad as hell." And I was like, that is perfect, I love it, it's so ridiculous. And I carried that thing around me for years, and it just finally fell apart. I mean, if I'm honest, I don't know if I'd still have it on my wall, but I love that poster. It went with me to my dorm room at boarding school, my college room. But now I would say the posters that I carry around with me and that mean so much to me are ones that I've gotten on my travels. And again, I love the unique, more underground, independent things. And in my travels in China, I went to a poster store that was called the Propaganda Museum, and you could buy actual artifacts because they don't want this stuff anymore. Most Chinese don't care, don't want it. I'm like, these are treasures. These are things that people touched during Mao's Cultural Revolution, and now they're for sale. So I got some posters from there. I've got some from Vietnam, and I just love having this kind of artwork around in my space. One of my posters now that's like a primo piece is by a graffiti artist out of the Bay Area, Shepard Fairey. He actually did the Obama Hope campaign, but back in the day he wasn't well known. He was just doing graffiti and we would see it all over San Francisco. And he put up for sale a Mao Obey Giant poster and they had a limited screening of numbered series, and they were only $25 because he wasn't anybody then. And I bought one of those, and it's like place of pride in my house. I think people, when they come in, think that I'm like a big fan of Mao. I'm a fan of the history. I love learning history. I'm not a fan of Mao, but it says Obey Giant and it has Mao's face on it. But to me, it's very special because at that time, I didn't know that he was going to go on to kind of such notoriety. So you could say my walls are almost covered with posters that I treasure. I also have t-shirts that I treasure that are usually, again, small, weird, quirky posters and t-shirts that represent something unique, something interesting, and those are the ones that last. I have a t-shirt to escape from the everyday. I watch K-dramas, that's my guilty pleasure. And because in the end of K-dramas, they always get the bad guys and the good guys always win. And I have a t-shirt that is based on one of those K-dramas that represents this weird, quirky aspect of this travel agent, and I love wearing it, and I've been wearing it for years. It's wearing out, but I'm waiting for the day that someone actually recognizes the joke that I'm trying to make. So I have to keep wearing it, hoping that someday someone will recognize what I'm doing. Well, it's one of the posters that I have that I got when I was in Vietnam that I really connected with. I used to work for an organization when I lived in Australia called Earth Hour, and they were underneath WWF, which is the giant panda logo. And when I was in Vietnam, we were in a little shop that was selling all these kind of propaganda style posters, but with new messaging on them. And there was one, I don't know what it actually says, but it has the giant panda. It's obviously talking about the environment. And then it has this Vietnamese writing on it. And it looks like one of these old kind of propaganda style posters that you see in China and Vietnam from that communist kind of aesthetic. And so it captures so much to me of, me personally with the panda logo. At that time I was working for WWF, but also it's got that kind of Vietnamese component in the kind of communist propaganda style, and then the language, the coloring, the palette. So I feel like the power of posters is they can really convey so much depending on the palette, depending on the font choice and the messaging. And as I was saying earlier, the propaganda museum in China, it was like these posters are gorgeous and they're trying to tell the story of the what people wanted, what they were aspiring to. Now, they didn't get there, at least in my opinion, but I feel like they have the power to convey aspirational ideas and where we strive and aim for, like the hopes, but they also become works of art because the artist can bake in their touch, their personality, and their treatment of whatever idea that is. And I mean, obviously that's part of why I like the Squirrel Census poster as well. It bakes in some of those ideas of a message, a purpose, but also artistry and independent thinking and new takes on something. And I think that's for me the real win of a successful poster. One of the things I'm excited about that's coming up, I referenced earlier when I was talking about the kind of the context of the Wren's Nest and Joel Chandler Harris, that he captured these stories from enslaved people and then he published them and popularized them. And if he hadn't captured them, they might have been lost, and he tried to capture them as authentically to how they were shared with him as possible. But there is that element of appropriation. He made money from these stories, and the people who told him these stories, the people who owned these stories, were not compensated in any way. He did try to talk about the people who he learned them from, but the character of Uncle Remus, which was the vehicle through which he told these stories, was a composite of several of the enslaved peoples that he met. But all that just to say that one of the things I'm excited about is we're doing a rewrite of our script, which is going to launch in March. And it really dives a little deeper into these kind of more problematic components of the Wren's Nest narrative. From our current board and myself, our thinking is that obviously the way that a lot of people of my generation know these stories is really through the Walt Disney movie, Song of the South, which now, for obviously good reasons, has been siloed from the Disney kind of universe. And they've even taken away the Brer Rabbit ride, Splash Mountain, that was at Disney World, because they want to draw a line between themselves and that piece of film that they made. And part of the problem is that that film portrayed slavery as warm and fuzzy and not that bad, and people were happy and well taken care of. And so you can understand why that is problematic, and that's why a lot of people knew those stories. And so I feel like we wanted people to stay in touch with the stories as they were originally shared, which doesn't have nearly that kind of heavy-handed, bucolic picture that Disney took on that aspect of it, but also have those hard conversations about like that Joel Chandler Harris benefited from it, and how could we do better? How can we understand, unpack this conversation and the stories and enjoy them in a way that is respectful and honoring the people and their real origins. And that's part of what we try to do all the time at the Nest by having the folkloric tradition of storytelling happening every Saturday and bringing in folklore and stories from all over the world. But I feel like this new script rewrite is going to really help us position ourselves as in Atlanta's history as we evolve as a city and understand our history and re-understand some painful parts of our history and where things were maybe not done right, or definitely not done right in some cases, how we can kind of learn from that and not repeat some of those things, and also pull out and get rid of those things that are not good and no longer serve us. And that this script rewrite will help position us as part of that growing conversation about, we're going to talk about these things, we're not going to sweep them under the rug, and we want to engage with your dialogue too. When people come in, they can ask questions, let's have a conversation about it, let's talk about about how some people don't even want to talk about the story of the tar baby because they find it so offensive. Is there a way to use that story as instructive or redefine it? And I feel like some of our storytellers have successfully recaptured the essence that's important in those stories, but reframed it in a way that isn't offensive to people and doesn't hurt and isn't derogatory or stereotyping of people. And I feel like the script rewrite is exciting to me. It's something that I really was pushing for from when I started at the Wren's Nest, because it's easy now that the discourse around these stories the books aren't out there as much, the Disney movie's not out there. I meet people all the time who've never heard of Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Bear. So, and that's fine, of course, but there's still fun and there's still interesting things that impact into those stories. So wanting to share that, I think the script rewrite will help us stay relevant and help us inform young people who are coming up in the generations, not just about the stories, but about their role, good and bad, in Atlanta's history and the US history writ more largely, and keep that conversation going so we can keep learning and keep unpacking any of those harms and shining a light on the good things as well.